Now step 4, in fact we exchanged step 3 and 4, but that doesn't matter. We need to find the asymptotes of the curve. So asymptotes are values when y becomes undefined. So clearly looking at this expression for y, in the denominator we have x minus 1 and x minus 3. So when x equal to 1 and x equal to 3, y is undefined. So x equal to 1 is an asymptote. And x equal to 3 is an asymptote as well. So what happens when x is slightly less than 1? So when, let's rewrite the expression for y. Y is equal to 3 over x minus 1, x minus 3. So when x is slightly negative, so we take x to be 1 minus, not slightly less than 1. When x is slightly less than 1, x is 1 minus epsilon, so epsilon is a small number. So when x is 1 minus epsilon, we have y, if we substitute for x in here, if we substitute for x 1 minus epsilon, we'll get 3 over minus epsilon times 1 minus epsilon minus 3 would give us minus 2 minus epsilon. So here in the numerator we have 3, in the denominator we have a very small number because we are multiplying epsilon by some number. Epsilon is a small number. So we have a negative number multiplied by another negative number to give a positive number. So we have a very small positive number in the denominator and 3 in the numerator. So this value approaches positive infinity. When x is slightly less than 1, y approaches positive infinity. What happens when x is slightly more than 3? I mean, we can also check what happens when x is slightly more than 1. Leave it as an exercise for you to do. And let's check what happens when x is slightly more than 3. So let's make x 3 plus epsilon. So what is the value of y in that situation? So the value of y in that situation would be 3 over 3 plus epsilon minus 1 will give us 2 plus epsilon. So 3 plus epsilon minus 1, which is this term here. So 3 plus x is 3 plus epsilon minus 1 will give us 2 plus epsilon. And let's consider this term here. So x is 3 plus epsilon minus 3 would give us epsilon. So in the numerator we have 3, in the denominator we have a positive number because epsilon multiplied by another positive number is a positive number, and in the denominator we have a very small positive number, so this approaches positive infinity. So when x is slightly less than 1, y approaches positive infinity. When x is slightly greater than 3, y approaches positive infinity as well. So we know x equal to 1, x equals 1 is an asymptote, and x equal 3 is also an asymptote. Now we can use this information that we obtain in steps 1 to 4 to plot the curve. or to sketch the curve. Let's see, let's put down the information that we already have. When x is slightly less than 1, we have the value of y approaching positive infinity, and we also know that x equal to 1 is an asymptote. So this is x equal to 1 line, which is the dotted line, and this is the x equal to 3 line that you see, the dotted line. So when x is slightly less than 1, y approaches infinity but does not touch the x equal to 1 line, because x equal to 1 is an asymptote. The curve never touches an asymptote, it only approaches an asymptote. When x is slightly more than 3, the curve y value approaches infinity. So we could draw this line here. So the curve never touches the asymptote x equal to 3, but comes arbitrarily close to the asymptote. When x goes to positive infinity, y goes to positive infinity. So we have this curve here. When x goes to negative infinity, beg your pardon, when x goes to positive infinity, y goes to 0. That's this part of the curve, and y was slightly positive. When x goes to negative infinity, y approaches 0, and y is slightly positive. So the curve will be in this part above the x-axis. Now we know there is a stationary point at x equal to 2, and the value of y at that point was -1. So at 2 minus 1, we have a stationary point, and that's a maximum. So here is 2, and at -1 there's a maximum. So that's got to be, the curve's got to be doing something like this. Now with that information that we have, we can now sketch the curve. And also we know that the curve crosses the y-axis at 1. When x is 0, y is 1. So we got that information as well. When x is 0, y is 1. So curve crosses the y-axis at some point at 1. So with all this information, we can now sketch the curve. So here is the maximum point, and the curve cannot touch the asymptotes, so this part of the curve has to be between x equal to 1 and x equal to 3. So here is the other part of the curve with the curve crossing at 1. So that's 1, and we can see when x is slightly less than 1, y approaches infinity. When x approaches -infinity, y is slightly positive. And also we can complete the sketch by drawing this part of the curve. We can see when x approaches infinity, y approaches 0, and when x is slightly above 3, y approaches positive infinity as well. So we have the sketch of the curve as shown.